Hello and welcome back to Reese Rambles, my weekly wrap-up of all the comings and goings in the tech industry, the retro tech industry, the retro gaming industry, basically anything I've spotted on the internet that has tickled my fancy over the past week or so. And yeah, how you all doing? Welcome to another weekend, and indeed a long weekend here in the UK. Hooray! What a wonderful thing, isn't it? But yes, hope you're all well. Of course, I didn't put an episode out last week, and I did talk about that in the previous one that I recorded. Basically, I was on holiday, so yeah, nothing, no conspiracy theory or anything. I just ran out of time to record an episode, and I did take some stuff with me with a view to maybe recording something while I was away. But to be honest, I was with my wife and I was with my friends, and we had a big house and we drank lots of wine, and recording podcast episodes was kind of the last thing on my mind. So hopefully you can forgive me for that. But yes, we are back. We are back on it. And just before I get into my very first story of the week, I should probably talk about these Atari posters that I've got dotted around the office. I appreciate a lot of you listen on the podcast, the podcasting platforms, and don't have access to the video version. I put some pictures of these out on my social media, on my Instagram and Twitter and all of that stuff. But yeah, I always like to have something interesting here on the desk just for you to have a look at if you get tired of looking at my face. And I literally just finished framing these. I recorded a video unboxing these earlier in the week. They were a gift from a good friend of mine in the industry, Lewis Packwood. And yeah, it's not like a sponsored thing or anything like that. Although Atari should be paying me for all the promotion that I do for them on my channels. But that's a different story. And yeah, there is indeed some big Atari news that I'm going to talk about a bit later on in the episode. But we'll talk about all of that later on. And indeed, these posters and the video that went out about these posters. But let's get into the first story of the week, and of course that is to do with the big political news that's happened in the UK this week. In that, completely out of nowhere, our Prime Minister, Mr. Rishi Sunak, has announced a general election which will be happening on the 4th of July. And basically our government, which was already dysfunctional at the best of times, has completely ceased to function as a result. And that has had an effect on us in the world of retro gaming as well, of course, because of this ongoing petition. Ross Scott and his YouTube channel, Accursed Farms, of course, the Stop Killing Games movement, which I've talked about in the past few rambles, a big movement to try to get game developers to not shut down games at zero notice and leave a lot of people out of pocket. Of course, modern games all having an online component, even single player games that don't really need to have constant access to servers and stuff. But you know all of that story, I'm sure. You can go back and listen to my previous rambles on that, and check out the website stopkillinggames.com if you want some more info on that. But the pertinent news this week is that yeah, because there is a general election looming, all of the government petition website has been shut down, and all currently active petitions basically run out on the 30th of May, which is less than a week away. And this one in particular was doing really well. So it was up to over 26,000 signatures. The government had already responded to this. They'd given an official response, which of course they have to do once they get 10,000 signatures. And there was some interesting stuff in there, which I talked about last time. Stuff about consumer protection law and you know, potentially hinting that maybe these game publishers will need to put expiration dates on their games if they know in advance that the game's going to stop functioning on a specific date, which was the case when it came to The Crew, which was kind of the big headline game that led to all of this stuff happening in the first place. And basically, it turned out that Ubisoft had only licensed the vehicles and the music in that game for 10 years when they made it, and they were still selling that game 9 years and 6 months on, knowing full well that the game would only work for another 6 months, and that the people that were paying full price for it and buying it, well, I guess they weren't paying full price by that point, but the people who were buying brand new boxed copies of it were going to have something that just didn't work at all after 6 months, which is completely unacceptable, of course. So, yeah, that's basically what led to all of this happening. And it seemed like there was some quite promising inroads happening on the legal side of things here in the UK. And yeah, that's kind of all stopped now. That government response, by the way, apparently the regulator did step in and say that it wasn't a good enough response, and that the government were going to have to revise it and come up with something a bit more detailed, which was really promising because I mean, I personally don't think that the first one was a non-response, as a lot of people are saying. I think there was at least a little bit of substance to it, but to get them to actually look at it again and say, actually, no, we're going to look at this properly and come up with a proper response was really good news and really promising news as far as the campaign is concerned. But all completely meaningless, all moot now that this petition's basically being shut down and whole government's being shut down on the 30th of May. So There you go. Bit of sad news for that, but hopefully we can restart this thing once the election has happened. We'll have to get all those signatures again, I think. I don't think this picks up where it left off. And yeah, hopefully the next government take it a little bit more seriously, and we can get the ball rolling on that again. So a little bit of a stumbling block, I guess, politically as a result of that. But hey, that's how it goes. And anyone who's used to used to living under our current government in the UK for the past 15 years, this probably comes as absolutely no surprise. So I'm a big fan of FPGAs, or Field Programmable Gate Arrays, those wonderful reconfigurable chips, and in particular, of course, using those for retro gaming, which is their relevance to this channel and to what I do here. Of course, the Mister being the big daddy out of all of those, and I do indeed own a Mister setup, a Mister multi-system made by Heba. Really great kind of all-in-one solution for running all of those old computer and console cores. Mister started off years and years ago as a way to try and recreate the Atari ST and the Amiga using an FPGA chip. It was called the MIST project, and yeah, who'd have thought that all these years later we'd be running stuff like the Sega Saturn and the PlayStation and the N64 on it. I mean, you know, those open source developers have really pushed the boundaries of what is possible with this Cyclone 5 FPGA chip. You know, back in those early days, people didn't think that stuff like this was even possible. But we are hitting the limits of that, and of course people have started talking about a successor. And no, I'm not talking about this FPGA-based Game Boy Color. Just a little plug here for a video I did on my channel a couple of weeks ago. Love this thing. Not sponsored at all. I actually spent my own money on this thing, and I still love it. So go check out that video if you haven't already. But no, I am, of course, talking about some recent developments in the world of Mister successors, or potential successors. And specifically, let's have a look at the Mars project first, because that's the one that everyone seems to be talking about. And Todd Gill, a friend of the channel, of course, the name behind Retro Frog, that fantastic shop designing and selling all those wonderful 3D printed accessories for all your old consoles. Again, not sponsored, just a friend of the channel. He is a part of the core Mars team, and he was taken on board along with some other quite big and quite well-respected names in the industry a few months back. Say a few months back, it was probably last year at this point. But anyway, the timing of that isn't important. What is important is that he's responsible for the case design, and he has finally unveiled what looks like the final case design for the Mars FPGA console. So really cool looking thing, this. And of course, it's not just what it looks like that matters, but also the connectivity that we can see on this design. You know, kind of the definitive word on what kind of connectivity this console is going to have. And it has a lot of connectivity, which is great, because in the world of Mister, obviously all of this stuff is available as separate modules that you kind of plug into the thing. And in the case of the multi-system, which I have, obviously a lot of that is built in. But yeah, it looks like they're kind of starting off the bat trying to cover literally all bases. And that's kind of a cool thing, but also maybe contributing to that high price as well. Anyway, I'm not here to talk about pricing. I'm here to talk about case design. So these images, first we'll take a look at this little line drawing, if we like, of the back of the console. So we can see it has Ethernet, USB, HDMI, a VGA connector, as you might expect. All standard stuff that we can see on most of the Mister systems as well. The VGA connector is labelled as analog multi, so I imagine that there will be you know, RGB video output and SCART adapters and things available for that. He's also mentioned that they have decided to go with RCA, or the old phono jacks for audio, over 3.5mm. Not quite sure what he's got against 3.5mm, but he did make a comment about that. But so you won't be plugging your headphones directly into this thing, but is that really a use case that a lot of people use? I'm not really sure. And rounding off the back, of course, we have the power connector and a CVBS connector, which of course is composite video. Now, I have seen some discussion off the back of this. People requesting S-video and asking whether that will be a thing. And I haven't seen an official answer on that yet. So, of course, there are a lot of PVMs and kind of consumer TV sets from kind of the early 90s and people outside of SCART regions that do have S-video, and it is a step up from composite, so it would be quite nice to see that as a supported thing, but probably something they can add using the analog multi-port. And then moving on from the, we'll just have a look at this other line drawing as well. There's like an isometric kind of 3/4 view drawing here, and it shows the actual case design itself. And we can also see that it has a jammer connector on the side, which of course is that arcade machine standard. So you can slap this thing straight into a jammer arcade cabinet and it will interface with the controls and the monitor and everything straight off the bat using that connector, which is fantastic. That's an industry standard. And of course, there's a big use case for people using these systems in arcade cabinets because you can get a lovely, authentic arcade experience on them. And indeed, I am going to be putting a Mister in my arcade cabinet at some point on the channel in the future when I get around to that. I'm going to actually have room here in the studio to bring my arcade machine over. But the console itself, the Mars console, kind of inspired maybe by the Sega Saturn, the Mega Drive, maybe a bit of PC Engine influence there. All those lovely old systems that you might expect. Nice square chunky case here, and it's got a kind of a curved part on the top which houses the cartridge port. A little bit more information on that cartridge port just in a moment, but of course that's quite a big revelation. And Todd has also confirmed in conversations with people on Twitter that this thing also supports loading from SD card as well. So much like the existing Mister solutions, you can put your game ROMs and things on an SD card and load them into the Mars system. You don't have to own all of the original cartridges, but if you do, hey, it's much like the kind of the analog consoles and stuff like that. So that's really cool to see. And we can also see the interchangeable controller modules that they have on this thing. So, of course, Mister has Snack, which allows you to connect lots of original controllers, original Atari joysticks and N64 controllers and NES controllers, SNES controllers, all that kind of stuff. Mars also has all of that supported as standard, kind of built into the product itself, into the console itself. And one thing that he has, quite interesting piece of information that he has confirmed on Twitter is that the joystick inputs are actually universal, so you can navigate all the menus and things with them as well, which is kind of a limitation that Mister has, that the Snack connected controllers only work with kind of within the context of the core that you're running. So a little bit of a small improvement there, which is always great to see. Personally, I don't use original controllers on mine. I tend to use like the 8-bit Do recreations, the Bluetooth versions, that kind of thing. But hey, it's great to have options, and the default module is a USB module, so you can use your modern wired controllers with it. And just kind of rounding that out is the Mars logo in the top. But for that, we shall go on to the renders. There's a little bit of information about the cartridges. Basically, it has its own proprietary cartridge standard built in, but there will be adapters available. And some of the ones that they've shown here are the N64 and the SNES as well. So interesting stuff. I'm not sure whether there will be any kind of sort of native software available for this thing that will be released using their own cartridge standard, or whether that will just be an interface that will be used for those adapters. That hasn't been confirmed from what I can see, but it's all looking rather cool. It's all looking rather nice. So here's that comment about the 3.5mm. Also for stereo audio, no wimpy 3.5mm headphone jack here. What's he got against 3.5mm jacks? I don't know. I also saw a few people kind of complaining about the logo and how it's sort of so big and so prominent on the top of the case. But I actually quite like the logo. I think it fits in quite nicely. I think, once we have an actual physical product to look at, it will actually look quite cool. But hey, some positive news on the Mars project, which is always nice to comment on. Not sure if I'm going to be buying one of these things because some of the pricing that I've seen around, and I don't have that information to hand, but we're talking maybe, over double the price of a Mister setup. And of course, this thing is allegedly going to be a lot more capable. But very much a rich man's toy. But then again, if it supports all of that older stuff, plus things like the Dreamcast and the PlayStation 2, maybe the original Xbox, maybe PC stuff kind of over and above the 486 stuff that we get with the Mister, maybe it's worth it for all of those extra systems, 4K video output and all of those. So that is the Mars, but there has also been some news on another potential competitor that has surfaced this week, courtesy of TimeExtension.com, although of course the news originally came via a YouTube channel called Pixel Cherry Ninja, who covers all of this stuff in great detail, if you're interested in keeping up with the world of FPGA. But the headline here is a powerful new FPGA rival to Mister and Mars is in development. And this one's not quite as far along, but there's some quite interesting information about this. There's a block diagram about how it all kind of connects together internally, all those different kind of system components and connectors and things that it's going to have on it, the actual architecture of the system, which as a computer science kind of guy is quite interesting to see. And it's called the Replay 2. And one kind of very interesting aspect of this is that it's going to be basically completely 100% backwards compatible with all of the original MiSTer cores, because it's using the next generation of that Cyclone FPGA that was used for the original MiSTer, which is really exciting because obviously it's going to be a huge development effort to get everything ported over to Mars. But if this system does, this Replay 2 system does kind of come to fruition, then it's just a case of everything just running on it from day one, which is fantastic. So basically, it goes to say that goes into a bit more detail. System is a mini ITX board with a state-of-the-art Intel 7nm Agilex 5 FPGA, described by the developer as very fast and low power. Uses DDR4 memory. Of course, we're starting to see limitations of the memory, not capacity but speed, more so with the MiSTer system. The internal RAM is kind of too slow to use for most things beyond kind of the sort of 16-bit era, and those later consoles are actually running up against speed issues with the external RAM modules that people have developed using the built-in GPIO on the D10, of course. But yes, this uses DDR4 memory. Of course, it has SoC, ARM CPUs and stuff to run all the menus and everything else, all the disk emulation stuff, just like the MiSTer does. Of course, you need all of that in addition to those FPGA chips. And it says it's capable of at least 4K 60 video output. So yeah, you can play your old NES games or your old Atari 2600 games at 60 FPS in 4K. And it says at least. So will it support 8K? I mean, I've been doing stuff in my day job with 8K displays for quite a while now, so that would be quite wild to see. A high quality 30-bit analog VGA output and high quality audio codecs and all that stuff, as you might expect. And as I mentioned, there's actually going to be two versions of this. So there's going to be a version with the top of the range version is called the Replay 2 FAT, or the R2 FAT, PHAT. And that has an FPGA which is roughly 4 times the size of the DE10 Nano used for MiSTer, which is insane. So I think we're going to quite easily get stuff like the Dreamcast on there without any problems. And there's also going to be an R2 Lite, which it says will be more modest, but still somewhat larger than the Cyclone 5. So really cool to see. I keep saying Cyclone 5. I don't know if it's Cyclone V. Someone's going to correct me inevitably and get very annoyed if that's wrong. But anyway, so 2 different versions of the Replay 2, a light version and a fat version. I guess there will be quite a big price difference because these big complex FPGA chips are quite expensive because they're just a very specialist thing and they're kind of designed to be sold in reasonably small quantities. And there's also just a little bit more technical information here. So the developer adds the R2 FAT has a 2-lane PCIe M2 slot for SSD. So that's cool. Native SSD support using an M2 slot, along with an optional compute module expansion slot, which has 4 PCIe Gen 3 MIPI display interfaces, Ethernet miscellaneous I/O. Originally, this was going to be an RK3588 module. We're also looking at CM5. I don't know what any of that stuff means. Both boards have an M2 slot for Wi-Fi and Bluetooth module, of course. That should be pretty standard nowadays. And swappable I/O modules for things like DB9 or SNAC controller imports. Like I say, similar to Mars and similar to the MiSTer SNAC stuff. You can use your original controllers with this potentially as well. It has dedicated I/O for that, so that's fantastic to see. And lots of USB 2 and also a multi-mode USB-C connector. So it says here the team has 10 chips for the prototypes, currently waiting for the PCB, and they admit that progress has been delayed slightly due to the complex design and trying to keep costs down as much as they can. So, another potential exciting project. Obviously going to be keeping an eye on this Replay 2 project, and indeed Mars now. Stuff kind of seems to be moving with that, but the next generation of FPGA. And I know there's been a lot of kind of rivalry and stuff like that and infighting between these various factions and various systems, but the thing you have to remember is that the original MiSTer isn't going away. It exists. It's fantastic as it is. You can play all that amazing old stuff on it. And these new systems don't detract from any of that. They just kind of add newer stuff and more complex stuff. and some quality of life stuff like those video outputs and controller options and stuff like that. So I think they are to be celebrated, no matter what your thoughts are on kind of the politics involved. But very interesting to see stuff moving, obviously, in this world that we have now. The chip shortages and things are starting to abide a bit, and manufacturing and design capacity is fully kind of back up and running. Cool to see these new projects that people are starting to come out with, and great to see more innovation in this space. If there's one thing we all love in the world of gaming, it's a good old-fashioned console war, isn't it? So, of course, we've got the Xbox owners versus the PlayStation owners versus the Nintendo Switch owners versus the PC Master Race, I guess, which of course is the best one. And then back in the day, we had the Atari ST versus the Amiga, and we had the SNES versus the Mega Drive, and the Commodore 64 versus the Spectrum. And yeah, these rivalries are as old as time. They go all the way back to the beginnings of home gaming, and indeed all the way back to the 1970s. And I think one of those oldest rivalries involved Atari, of course, one of my favourite companies. So back in 1977, of course, Atari released the VCS, or the Video Computer System, later known as the 2600, went on to be one of the kind of the longest-lived and best-selling consoles of all time, one that everyone should be familiar with. Recently reborn in the form of the 2600 Plus, which is a wonderful thing that I've covered extensively on my channel. But yeah, of course, after they released that, 2 years later, Mattel, a big toy company, still a big deal when I was a kid in the 90s, and not sure if they're still around today. Not relevant to the story, don't get distracted. But yes, 2 years later in 1979, Mattel released their Intellivision console, which went on to become a bit of a thorn in Atari's side for most of the 80s. The Intellivision and its follow-ups. And yes, this is a console, and I have to say that I didn't actually realise that this was officially sold in the UK until I looked at the Wikipedia page a few minutes ago. I don't know anyone in the UK who ever owned one of these things. I'm sure people out there did, but certainly a much bigger deal in America, and a brand that I am very, very familiar with, of course, because they are one of those sort of huge names in the world of gaming. So big deal, big deal. And of course, more recently, they were revived in a similar way to the way that Atari was, and a group were trying to bring them back and release their own console called the Intellivision Amico, which is a whole story in and of itself, and not one that I really want to go into too much detail with here. But needless to say that it's been hit by various delays and cash flow problems, and people calling it vaporware. They took quite a lot of money in kind of Kickstarter or whatever it was type funding. And also a very colourful character at the helm of this project for quite a few years called Tommy Tallarico. A really notorious name, well worth looking up. In fact, I'll link a documentary about him down below that I watched quite recently, because he's an interesting chap. Not that that's relevant to any of this, because Atari, while they have acquired the Intellivision brand and also apparently over 200 of their game IPs as well, they haven't acquired the Amico. So the current Amico team will be continuing. They're going to be rebranding the company under a different name. There hasn't been any kind of announcement as far as what that's going to be. Probably just going to be called Amico. But hopefully that's kind of a big cash injection that they need to get that project to market. Finally, after all these years, it was originally supposed to be released in 2020. So yeah, this is the official press release here on Atari.com. So they've acquired the Intellivision brand and their back catalogue of games. They've also recommitted to supporting the Amico, and of course Atari were already going to be involved with releasing some games and things for that console, but recommitted to supporting that, as well as releasing the back catalogue of Intellivision games in various forms on various platforms, milking them to death, as of course modern day Atari do. So actually, looks like quite an interesting thing. And I know nothing about the Intellivision. I don't mind admitting that. Like I say, it wasn't a thing here in this part of the world. So it'd be quite interesting to check out its back catalogue and actually see what it was all about. Because I think, by all accounts, the original Intellivision console was actually very capable compared to the 2600 that I'm a lot more familiar with. And, it did actually have some kind of superior versions of games and stuff. So would be cool, maybe one of Atari's other brands. Of course, they acquired Digital Eclipse. They've been acquiring all sorts of stuff over the past few years. Night Dive Studios, of course, making all those boomer shooters, and Lord knows what else Atari actually own nowadays. But Maybe they could use Digital Eclipse, who did the Atari 50 collection. Maybe they could do an Intellivision collection, and we could discover those games in that format, which would be quite a cool thing to see. So, I think this is quite positive news. Obviously, the brand was kind of languishing a bit, and maybe this gives the Amico a bit of a kick that it needs, and also, it puts all of those games in, dare I say it, slightly more capable hands. So, interesting one to watch. And I think that segues quite nicely into my favourite segment of these rambles. And no, that's not video of the week. That will be coming along next. But the bit where I talk about myself, where I talk about my 2 YouTube channels and my various other outputs. And I did mention at the beginning of this ramble that I would be talking a little bit about these Atari posters and why they're here. And that's because, if you haven't seen the video that's gone out on my second channel this week, on this channel, if you're watching on YouTube, these were very kindly given to me by Lewis Packwood, of course, the British game journalist and chap that I worked with on the Curious Video Game Machines book, which I bang on about all the time. I did some consulting work for him on that and gave him a load of Atari information and photos and stuff that made it into the book, which is fantastic. Also helped him out at the launch event for that book as well. And he was at a show in London called WASD and got talking to the people on the Atari stand, and they gave him these posters, and he basically had no use for them, so he sent them on to me, which was very kind of him. So thank you, Lewis. And of the posters included in the tube, there were a load of kind of reproductions of historic Atari game posters, but there were also these 4 brand new designs, which I really love. I think these are fantastic, and if you want to see more of these, I'll post some pictures. Obviously, I've got them framed up now, as you can see, and these will be going on the walls here in the studio. Pride of place, and I'll post some pictures of these on my other social media over on Instagram and Twitter and all of the rest of it. Might even post them on YouTube as well as a community post. But thank you ever so much to Lewis for that. And of course, that was a good opportunity to put a very quick video together for the second channel, just to get the ball rolling after my holiday and stuff. And that's been very well received. So thank you, people who appreciated that and gave it a thumbs up and all of that. And also in that video, I picked up some accessories for the desk PC, some Time branded stuff that matches that PC, which is really cool. Haven't had a chance to play with that yet because I'm working on a big main channel video at the minute, which I need to get on with after I've recorded this. But that's all looking really cool. So, just a bit of a simple unboxing video, but a nice little sit down and poke through some stuff. So posters looking cool. And an update on a previous thing that I did, an ongoing thing, which is ongoing until the end of October. Of course, we have the Jaguar Game Jam for the Atari Jaguar. Mentioned this in a big announcement video over on my main channel, Control-Alt-Reese, just before I went away. This is in conjunction with Songbird Productions and Boris Kretzinger. And we've had a lot of interest in this, so this is really cool. In fact, he's actually emailed over an update. I won't show you the email. It's sit there and read it and give away his email address and stuff like that. But great update. Basically, what's happened so far is that in addition to the 5 people who've already applied through the itch.io page, which I think is quite a good turnout for such early days for this competition, he's also been talking to an Atari 8-bit developer in Germany. Hasn't mentioned who, but apparently they're quite keen to get on board with this as well. But also speaking to the creator of the game drive, the Jaguar game drive, which of course I mentioned, James from Retro HQ, a really lovely guy I've spoken to before, and he's been working on some stuff, some voxel based stuff for the Jaguar as well. Kind of a bit of a tech demo, I think, but I think Boris is in the process of persuading him to get on board and actually turn it into a proper game for this game jam, which would be really cool to see because he's a really clever chap and knows the Jag inside and out. So whatever he comes up with is going to be awesome. So just a couple of updates on that, and great to see that the word is getting out. Boris has also been in touch with some other YouTubers in the Atari sphere, so hopefully we'll start seeing this Jag Jam starting to pop up on a few other channels. But nice to see that word is getting out there, and that's the Jag Jam, and stay tuned to, of course, the Reese Rambles and my main channel, Control-Alt-Reese, for some more updates on that. But I'm very much looking forward to judging all of your entries. And now, as promised, it's time for Video of the Week, my weekly segment where I talk about my favourite thing that I've seen on YouTube in the past week. And of course, I didn't record a ramble last week, so I guess I owe you 2. which is good because I have two that I want to recommend to you. And one of them comes via my friend Phil, who was actually on that holiday with us. And this channel's had a bit of attention lately because he did also, coincidentally around the same time, have a shout out from Adam Savage, of course, of Mythbusters fame. But Phil discovered this channel a while ago and urged me to go back and watch the guy's back catalogue, which we did in our Airbnb with a few glasses of wine. And it's some of the most creative and weird YouTube stuff that I've seen, and I wanted to, if you haven't heard of it already and this hasn't come up on your radar somehow, consider this my own personal endorsement. And this is a channel called I just alt-tabbed to the wrong tab. There we go. Called Bobby Fingers, and he's how do you even describe this channel? He's a professional model maker. I think he works in like the film and the TV world, and he makes these weird models and dioramas. And when I say weird, I mean they're absolutely fantastic. You know, the techniques that he uses and the way that he films these videos and edits them and stuff. The guy is a genius. He's extremely good at what he does and, actually building these things. But when I say weird, what I mean is his choice of subject matter. So this one is based on there was a male model in the 90s called Fabio, and he was involved in the launch of this roller coaster with like this Greek mythology theme, and he was like Apollo or someone. They dressed him up, and then they had all these women dressed in togas and stuff, and it was all televised, and there were news crews there, and it was this big roller coaster launch in America at Busch Gardens. And he went on the roller coaster and he got hit in the face by a low-flying goose. And this thing ended up on the news, and there was a camera that was recording the whole thing, and the footage from that was basically sort of hastily hidden away and has never officially been released. And this whole thing has gone down in history. And this is the kind of stuff that this guy picks for his dioramas. You know, he did one about Michael Jackson and the Pepsi commercial that he did that was quite infamous, where his hair got set on fire. He's done a diorama of that. I mean, the choice of subjects that this guy goes with, completely and utterly unhinged, and his presentation is amazing, and the way that he narrates it and the way that he goes off on all these weird tangents and all the extra bits of footage and little things and stories that he gets. And yeah, he got Adam Savage involved with this one, actually testing, building a cannon to launch rubber geese into a rubber recreation of Fabio's head, which sorry if I'm giving away the ending there, but the whole thing just has to be seen to be believed. So 25 minutes long. The story itself is absolutely fascinating. The model making in this is top notch, and yeah, it's just I mean, like I said at the time, this is peak YouTube. I love this, and his other videos on his channel are well worth checking out. So that's number one. But of course, it's been a couple of weeks, and I have watched some stuff this week since I got back. I have been very busy catching up with the day job and stuff as well. But there are a couple of things that came up on my radar, and there's some stuff that's been discussed over on my Discord. Some musical stuff. There was this lovely collaboration between Electric Callboy and Baby Metal called Rat-a-Tata. Two of my guilty pleasures musically. I do like my heavy stuff and my rather weird stuff. Yeah, but I thought that was quite hilarious and mental, as you might expect. But I can't really recommend that as a video of the week, can I? I don't do music videos, and yeah. So then I thought, well, I also saw this. You know, this is a really cool cover. This is Middle-Aged Dad Jam Band, and they've done a cover of Scenes from an Italian Restaurant by Billy Joel. Also, Weird Al is involved with this, oddly enough, just in the background playing the accordion. But I thought this was an absolutely fantastic cover of this song. And just some amazing musicianship and stuff on show. As you know, I'm a musician myself. I've been in various bands and stuff, and I am now also, although I'm not a dad, I am middle-aged, so perhaps I find this particularly relatable. So I thought that was cool, but again, we don't do music videos here as recommendations. So on perhaps a more serious note, I did come across this week, which I watched, and it's a short film, and it's called Pong. And yeah, after all that silliness, let's take a little moment just of seriousness. So this is it's a story about a guy who basically rediscovers his love of retro gaming and of the Atari 2600 specifically. He loses his dad, and it's like a story, dealing with kind of loss and all that kind of stuff, and just how just that kind of connection between generations and yeah, and all of that. And it's only 6 minutes long, 6 minutes and 9 seconds. And at the time of recording this, it's only got 1,160 views in a month, which I think is a crying shame, because I think it's a really creative and really nice little film, and one that I think a lot of us will find quite relatable. So I wanted to give that a bit of a shout out as well. I don't know the people involved with this at all. I just really quite like their work. It's been put out by Saint City Studios, and it's written and directed by Asim Yusuf. Yeah, just a really nice little story. So I'll link to that and my other recommendation down below. And yeah, it's a choose your own adventure video of the week this week. So you want to go with the silly model making sweary Irishman, or if you want to go with something a bit more poignant and a bit more thought provoking, it's up to you. So just a few slightly shorter bits and bobs just to end on, just before I wrap up for this week. A couple of little things that I just wanted to give a little mention to that perhaps didn't warrant their own full-blown story. So let's dive into these, and then we shall say our goodbyes. So first thing I wanted to mention is that it is Heber's. It has been Heber's 40th anniversary this week. And if you're not familiar with the name Heber, they are the people behind the Mr. Multi-System. And also, of course, Neil from RMC, you're probably familiar with his YouTube channel. They are also his landlords. They own the building that The Cave is based in. And obviously, I've been kind of a big supporter of Neil's work and stuff for quite a few years now, and I was very kindly invited down to their 40th anniversary celebration thing, which was just a small thing. I think Neil just didn't want to be outnumbered by Heber people, so he invited some friends of The Cave down just to, kind of back his side up, and also steal some of their food that they had reserved for them. So that was quite nice, and quite a nice, relaxed day out, just hanging around with Mark Fix's stuff and with some other people from the community. So that was great to see. Heber, they've got a really long history, so it's their 40th anniversary this week, and particularly in the gaming world, they've done electronics for fruit machines, gambling machines, also gaming machines, crane games, and they've done the Mr. Multi-System and the Console 8, and of course they also do industrial automation stuff and all of that. But British company designing and manufacturing stuff in the UK, which is always great to see. And yeah, great to see they're, doing so well after 40 years. So that was really cool, and I'm very much on board with that. And on that note, I did get to play with something, or I say play with something. I got to be around when something was being played with, which is an upcoming project of theirs, which they've also teased on Twitter this week. Now, I wasn't able to get permission to talk about this in any kind of detail, but I am very keen to talk about this in a future instalment. So hopefully there will be some more information available. I need to talk to Richard and find out exactly what I can say. But this is really, really cool. So it says here, gearing up for a new product line launch. It's getting exciting. First two products, console and dedicated jammer, both are in their final stages of approvals and manufacturing. We will have names soon and plan a cool vinyl sticker wrap for the enclosures. What do you all think? And I saw they had some backlash on this tweet from people saying, well, that's not really much information at all. This is kind of a non-announcement. What exactly is this thing? But it's a thing that goes inside an arcade machine. I'm sure you can imagine. And if you have an old jammer, much like with that Mars thing that I mentioned earlier in the Ramble, you have an old jammer arcade machine and you need some guts for it to run some games and things, then this might be something that's worth keeping an eye on. And as you can see here, there's also an interchangeable cartridge that adds things like a SCART output and a VGA output and some audio outputs and stuff as well. So, yeah, I wonder what that might be. Hopefully I'll have some more information for you on that one next week. Also in the news this week, IGN have acquired Eurogamer, GI, VG247, Rock Paper Shotgun. Big fan of that site back in the day. Not quite sure what they're like nowadays, but them and Eurogamer. Basically, they were all under this banner of the Gamer Network, and that company has now been acquired. Sorry, that's my desk beeping at me, by IGN Entertainment. And of course, they've inevitably already made a load of redundancies. So, yeah, another load of redundancies happening in the industry. Of course, we saw that with some game developers a few weeks back, and it seems that gaming journalism also isn't safe. So, bit depressing news, of course, but worth talking about. On a slightly lighter note, I came across this, and this is something I wanted to talk about this week. This is visitwales.com, the official tourism website of the country of Wales, my ancestral homeland, have made this metaverse game thing that you can play on their website. I was actually quite tempted to do like a live stream with this or make a video of it or something, but basically it's a thing to encourage tourism in Wales. And you can, it gives you a little avatar, and you can go and have a wander around virtual Wales. There's some giant daffodils here. There's a giant dragon that you can go and look at and have a poke at, and there's a castle that you can explore as well, which I was having a play with the other day. All runs in a browser. I nearly forgot the most important part. There's a cable car that you can ride on. And while you go around, there's all these signposts and things that teach you all about Welsh history and Welsh points of interest and stuff if you're interested in visiting Wales as a tourist. So that's quite fun to play with, and something that I was going to show off at some point. May as well let you have the link to that, because every time I've been on this like 5 or 6 times since I heard about it. Every time I've been on, there's barely anyone on it, which is a shame, because I was hoping there'd be like some griefers and some trolls on there making people's lives difficult. Not saying that you should go and do that, but hey, on behalf of the people of Wales, I think we'd probably find it quite funny if you did. And the only other thing that I wanted to talk about this week, and this is related to, of course, my PC98 project and stuff like that, story over on Time Extension. We're getting a classic edition of the PC88, Japan's iconic 80s computer. Of course, this went on to spawn the PC98 range, not directly related. I covered all the history of that in the video that I did about the PC98. But Denpa Micomsoft has unveiled the PC8801 Mark II SR Mini, compact version of the legendary Japanese 8-bit computer. Of course, the 8801 Mark II SR is the one to have. And yeah, apparently this is actually going to be a working thing with games and stuff on it, but not much information out there about it. Time Extension just speculates that it was home to some massively influential Japanese games, so perhaps some of these games might make it onto the system. But yeah, R-Type kind of being the most noteworthy one of those. So again, interesting one to watch. Maybe there'll be some news on that in the near future. But that's all I have for you for this week's Ramble. So thank you ever so much again for joining me. I hope you all enjoy the 3-day weekend if you're in the UK and you're lucky enough to not be working this weekend. Hopefully we're going to have some sunny weather. I'm off to a barbecue, very drunken barbecue, I expect, with my good friend Sam tomorrow, and that's all I have. So thank you for your attention, and I shall see you again as scheduled. Don't panic, I'll be here next week. Goodbye.